Hangout, do college degrees really matter? That's the question we are asking today. The reason is, of course, very simple. An Indian minister at the union level was caught saying that she had a graduate degree from a college, specifically Yale, where she actually only attended a one-week course. The larger question, of course, is do all these things really matter? I have with me today journalist Madhu Kishwar joining us from New Delhi. We've also got the national chairman of the CII Young Indians, DNV Kumara Guru, joining me right here, and also a professor to give you a slightly more on-ground education point of view, Rashmi Bhure from SIES College in Mumbai. So let me begin with you, Guru. What's your sense? Do you think we should be really talking about these things? Does it really matter?
No, to me, I don't think it really matters. I think if you were to specifically ask what the sort of youth of India really want, I think they are looking to people, especially elected representatives, who actually can get things done.
Right.
And in the process, obviously, some of these things about degrees and degrees in what areas, those are really matters of debate and really something that doesn't necessarily result in performance. So I think today's youth are more sort of focused on results. And of course, it's not as if to say that end matters more than the means. It's important that the politicians or the elected representatives, in this case, let's say ministers, do have the necessary requirements.
Right.
But I think they fulfill the necessary requirements to the extent that they fulfill the mandated requirements of the constitution.
Right.
So if they're eligible to hold that position, then how does it really matter what?
Right. Okay. So the other question is, when we look at people holding specific positions, let's say in this case someone in charge of the Ministry of Education, which is to do with education, then should we be a little more concerned, or should we be asking a question?
Not really. I don't think so. I think the issue is, so let's ask this question. What does the minister in India at the federal level, at the union level, really do in terms of, decision making? I think it's more policies, more direction. Why not ask the same question that the Secretary Higher Education or the Secretary School Education, do they have an educational degree in education management, for example? If we are not looking to the Secretary, the IAS officer who's holding that position and actually not worrying about what degree the person has, then why should this be applicable to the minister? In any case, political sort of appointees are actually people who are more general managers. In the next reshuffle, Smriti Irani could be the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Who cares? I mean, we don't know if Srimati Sushma Swaraj is actually holds any degree in international relations, but she seems to be well qualified to that office. So I don't think it matters.
So here's a question from someone. He says, what should be the criteria for elected representatives to be given ministries that impact lives?
I mean, I think every ministry impacts life. I think that's sort of a very general statement. Every ministry impacts life. I think some ministries have an ability to impact your immediate life. I don't think it really matters that just because some ministry seems to have an impact on an immediate sort of necessity, they should, the appointees should have something different.
The other question is that when you look at, let's say, higher education, primary school education, and then you have the advanced degrees and everything. So you're saying that really it doesn't matter what part of education you're really concerned with, the people who take the decision should be in general competent and perhaps good managers.
Yeah,
right?
see,
because things change when maybe higher education can take care of itself. I mean, postgraduate, let's say, degree education or B school education, to which you are also sort of connected with.
Yes.
But primary school education is something that requires far more, understanding.
See, true, I agree, but let's just step back for a second. And if you look at what ministers have to do, or even let's say Secretary to Government of India, they are going to go by the advice given to them by technocrats, by people who are qualified, by academic administrators and so on. And they should have within them the ability to sort of distinguish, distill, and then take the right decision. To that sort of direction, what they need is a greater appreciation of things that matter to the sort of larger population in this country. That I don't think a formal education can prepare you for that. It may help you, but it's not a necessary.
So let me put the question differently, and while we wait for our guest to join us. So if when you talk to people across the country as you do, what is the normal kind of refrain when it comes to the kind of expectations people have of their elected leaders?
I think
has been the refrain in the last few years.
Sure. I think the biggest issue is of an ability to connect. The larger complaint is that you vote people into power. There's a huge disconnect subsequently, and then, and I'm not just saying it from a constituency level issue, it's could be as a minister for a particular portfolio. If I'm a stakeholder in that particular relevant ministry, am I able to connect with that particular minister? More importantly, as the minister have the ability to connect with me. I think those are the sort of things. To me, that's the primary sort of issue. Other things are a little sort of comes after that. I mean, it follows from there, but not necessarily just.
So let me ask the flip question, right? The flip question is, in some cases, we've clearly had representatives in government, elected and non-elected, who are very qualified.
Yes.
Right. So what's the sense? I mean, have obviously the previous prime minister being one of them, who was Oxford, who was a doctorate and so on and so forth, and there were other ministers in the cabinet as well who were pretty well. I mean, by the kind of standards we normally think are. And then did that matter?
No, again, I think the only exception is the prime minister, because again, because he was a somebody who's a very accomplished academic, an economist of much repute, and a person who we all respect immensely. And that also in some sense actually worked to his disadvantage. You would think the man is so qualified, is so wise, and yet he allowed for some things to happen under his watch, because he was probably not sort of able to sort of manage things around him. So it may be that his sort of more formal systems that came in, that were part of his training probably did not allow him to be a little more agile, little more sort of quick in sort of identifying some of those issues and then plugging them. So I don't think it matters. Again, most people don't remember. In public life, perceptions matter. And while you cannot just base things on perception, you need real facts and data. Ultimately, people are going to sort of reward you or recognize you based on the work that you've done against the expectations that you've set based on your promise. So I think that's what matters.
Okay, and which perhaps leads us to the question of, does a good college degree, or a college degree for that matter, prepare you better to deliver to some of those things? But let me put that question to Rashmi Bhure, a professor from SIES College. Rashmi, how do you look at this issue? I mean, does education matter? Do college degrees matter when it comes to elected representatives?
Yes, definitely it does matter, because it gives you a better edge, a better position to understand today the complexities of the issues which are there. Though constitutionally it's not a must thing, because we do not have in our constitution any such provision which says that there has to be basic qualifications for the politicians. But today the kind of complexities that we are facing, especially our society, and the entire shift which India is seeing today to become a big power in the world, I think definitely it will give a better perspective, position to our politicians if they are educated, or even I would say highly educated.
Right. Let me put that question a little differently. What do your students want? I mean, when you talk to them and when you interact with them, what are the kind of standards that they are setting for our future leaders?
Yes, definitely. Today the young generation, the students, they want to see their politicians who are educated, who have gone to school, maybe even to the foreign universities, and who are highly educated. So they understand their problems in a much better way.
But are they seeing a correlation between the education and the outcome or the output?
May not be always, because in past, if you see specifically in Maharashtra itself, we have people like Govindraj Ethiraj, who have done excellent work not only at the state level but at the national level also. But the times of Govindraj Ethiraj were very different than today's times. Definitely, the leaders, if they are educated, I think they may perform better. But of course, again, every educated leader would give a better performance.
Right, so let me come back to Rashmi in a second. Kumar, the question is that over time has this debate changed?
I guess so. I think.
I mean, are we asking this question more so today, or was this as relevant a question 3 decades ago as it is today? Ronald Reagan in the US, an actor coming into the White House. I mean, politicians today who may not come with any education qualification, or is this something that we are a little more concerned about today?
I think we are a little more concerned, and rightfully so, because I think as a society, especially if you talk of India, you're sort of moving into a more, civic aware society. People are more concerned, citizens are more concerned about what's happening around them. There's a tendency to sort of ask tough questions of their elected representatives, which is a good sign. In the process, sometimes we tend to sort of pick on the more trivial things. But I also want to sort of set the context right. I mean, if the question is about does educational degrees matter, I think it's good to have them. But is it necessary, and would that have an impact on the kind of work that you do? I don't necessarily think so.
Okay, fair. Let me come back to the point over history.
Sure.
Today we are in a situation where young people are more connected, socially aware, everyone is asking questions, and it's also participative democracy because people feel that they can question elected representatives more actively and directly than they did before. So to that extent, is the political class, or should the political class be under more pressure to live up to people's expectations than it was ever before?
I without doubt, I think they have to be. And to that extent, learning should never stop. And to that extent, whatever that one needs to sort of do to invest in sort of, constant, learning, which includes, for example, like the one that the Honorable Minister for HRD went to Yale with some of her colleagues as part of a mid-career program or whatever it is for young parliamentarians, I think is the right sort of thing to be done, to be doing.
Except that she should have not referred to it as a degree.
So I think we should give her cut her some slack. I think she's under sort of immense pressure, I guess. But I think learning is important because it's also, I think it's only in India I think we sort of face these sort of questions where we believe that the only way you can sort of getting a degree, sort of an undergraduate degree, seems to be the only way that you have arrived in society. So it doesn't matter what you do, you need to get a degree. It could be, and today you have a large number of engineers who don't necessarily get the sort of jobs that an engineering graduate ought to be doing, and we don't believe that doing a vocational education, it could be high paying, would sort of give you that dignity in society. As a society, as parents, we apply a lot of pressure on our kids. You need to get that degree. That's not sufficient. You need to get a postgraduate, not necessarily seeing whether it would actually get you what you want really. So that's in some sense.
So you're saying the bottom line is?
No, so the bottom line is that I think learning, whether you're a political, is critical.
Is paramount and
it's
not
very critical.
And to that extent,
let's not just trivialize it by saying if you studied for a good degree from a good college 30 years ago and you ended up joining public service at the age of 55, that necessarily will make you a better politician now.
Today,
because of the fact that you went to a sort of really good
Ivy
school.
League or IIT for that matter.
Yeah, anything.
Rashmi, so what's your take on that? So Kumar says learning is what we should focus on. In the case that obviously led to this conversation, Smriti Irani went and did a 6-day course. Now, a 6-day course is better than doing nothing. And to that extent, we should be focusing on the larger issue of learning rather than saying, okay, where is your college degree or what did you do, for those 3 years or 5 years as the case may be.
It's not something that is important, but basically the exposure to the college life, to the university life, which will probably give a better edge for the politician when they are going to go abroad for studying the universities there or understanding the issues and making a comparative study of various countries. Some kind of formal education up to a certain level is absolutely necessary in today's world, because the kind of shifts that we are seeing in our education system also, the politicians will not able to understand them if they themselves have never gone through that.
Do college degrees really matter? And then of course is the question of, do college degrees matter for those people administering certain roles in government?
The first issue I raised was a false affidavit. If you lie about your educational qualifications, if you lie about your property, assets, and your affidavits are misrepresenting facts, it's a serious matter. It is an offense for which your Rajya Sabha membership can be cancelled, where if it's proven that you misrepresented facts knowingly, you can even go to jail. So we are talking of several layered problem. It's not a unidimensional problem. To me, lying on oath is far more serious, or misrepresenting facts, or boasting about facts which are not, or achievements which are not correct, is the real problem. Can we afford to have an HRD minister who lies about her own educational qualifications? What's she going to do when she gets to know about people who purchase false degrees or people who cheat in exams? How's she going to handle that kind of crisis which is endemic in our education system? Secondly, to say that college degrees don't matter, in which case, please, let's not demand that doctors be having MBBS degrees, or school teachers must have MA, MEd. There are many bad teachers with MA, MEd degrees, and there are many people who've never done an MEd or maybe just BA but can be good teachers. Let's do away with it. You cannot be so selective all of a sudden and say, while a school teacher must, a primary school teacher cannot be appointed without a degree, but an HRD minister need not have any of it. To me, that is bowdlerizing it, that's dumbing down the debate. Right. Because it assumes as if there were no other likely candidates who qualified, as if you just had to make do with the best or the worst that is available. That's second. Thirdly, as you've seen, there are two additional factors which I don't think we should see. There are people who learn from life because they engage with life in a very intense manner. But if you are the kind who went on to become a fashion model and then a Saas Bahu serial, you are not even from the world of art and culture. You're not even a Sonal Mansingh. You are not even a Begum Akhtar from the world of art and culture. You went to Saas Bahu serials, which in a way represent the lowest common denominator of the cultural scene in India. You spent 10 years there, and then you haven't won a single election, and yet you get the most important, today in my view, HRD portfolio is the single most important portfolio in the country, because in this knowledge century, Modi himself kept saying, India has fallen way behind in education, and this is the century of knowledge. Right. India has to catch up. And not only catch up, we must find a due rightful place. How do we find it with a person who doesn't know the difference between a degree and a certificate for a 6-day course? I mean, it's appalling to me, the level of ignorance she's displaying.
So, Madhu, that point is taken, that obviously there has been a foot in mouth of some sort here, but we're just trying to debate, frame and debate the larger question. I mean, what is the larger question according to you? Because, it shouldn't be that the next generation thinks that, education is a prerequisite for every politician or any politician. And that's really the larger question that we're trying to frame here. How do you respond to that?
I think it ought to be a prerequisite.
For a college degree?
I'll tell you why. Because an MP's job is primarily legislation. It's not like a panchayat member whose job it is to ensure that that the village needs. So you don't need a college degree to be a member of panchayat, because you know where the well is needed. You know if the school building is leaking or not. Those things don't require too much of education. It requires wisdom. However, a member of parliament or a member of legislative assembly, an MLA, the primary job is legislation. You're not there to clean Nali Karanjas. You're not there to put a bus stop here and give somebody a gas cylinder connection. You're there for legislation, and if you don't know how to read laws, and laws even for ordinary graduates, our BAs and MAs can't make sense of even laws that affect them directly, such as domestic violence law or dowry law. I have MAs and PhDs come to me and say, "Hame kaanoon pata nahi hai." In a situation where knowledge of law is so lacking, our laws are written in such a convoluted fashion, we need to simplify them. We need to pass legislation that makes sense, that actually eliminates the many layers of corruption, that is citizen friendly. How do you do it if you're not educated? I mean, this is utter nonsense that Rabri Devi's filling the parliament is good enough. They're not. I'm sorry. Even at the risk of sounding elitist, I would say, when the job, it's like a carpenter. You're saying to be a carpenter, you don't know how to run Randa and Ari, that you don't need to know how to hammer the nails in the right place. All you need to have is a good taste in furniture. No, thank you. Right. For every job, there is a qualifying criteria. And we have dumbed down our democracy by saying the MPs need no qualifying criteria. Somebody who has to appoint vice chancellors doesn't need to know how to spell the word vice chancellor. This is utter nonsense. It was okay when India got independence, and we actually had a very small percentage of people who were educated, and certainly very few college educated people, we didn't want to rule out people only because they didn't have education. Secondly, many of the people who became important leaders had fought for decades in the freedom movement. They had ground level experience of great depth. Today, nobody cares whether Sardar Patel had degrees or didn't. He did. But I'm saying what is more important is that he was part of this great upsurge, mass mobilization, understanding people's problems, live contact with millions of people, and articulating their problems. That gave him the kind of wisdom that doesn't come, say, from universities.
Right.
And there were many like him,
Yeah, Madhu,
whose
right.
degrees were secondary.
Yeah.
Today, to say that you can become an MP being illiterate, I'm sorry, will just not do. I'm, even at the risk of sounding elitist, I'm saying the job requires legislative competence. How do you get it if you are semi-educated or illiterate?
Yeah, right, Madhu. So we've sort of run out of time. I think the points that you made are really when either you have the sort of vast and wide mass contact and experience and thus representing the sort of voice of millions, or you need to be educated in some way. So I think Guru is going to come back for the last word and then we have to close.
Sorry, just I think there's a very quick distinction. I think Madhu made a very important point about the sort of special skills needed to legislate. I think that is different, and let's invest in educating and training our elected representatives to have that ability. But we also forget the way our current democracy works. When the party issues a whip, it doesn't matter what your individual views are. You just vote with the party lines. The second thing is, if you look at the records in the parliament and at the state assemblies, number of bills are passed in less than 5 minutes of debate time.
Correct. Particularly at the state level.
At the state level especially. So really, I think we are not really making a like-to-like comparison. These are broader issues, but to sort of just say that you need to have better skills of reading laws, and therefore are we then saying everybody should be a sort of legal education? There's no end to it. I think you need education, it helps.
Yeah,
but is
so
that
which in some ways comes back to your point that obviously there is a learning gap,
absolutely,
clearly, and there is a legislative learning gap or a legislative knowledge gap, which is critical in a country like India, whether it's a parliamentary or legislative level, right? Kumar, unfortunately we've run out of time. Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you so much. And the question, of course, was do you need to have a college degree to become a politician? Not quite answered there, but some very interesting inputs from our guests. Thank you very much for being with us on the India Hangout. We're going to be back tomorrow same time.